My name's Andrew Carter. I'm 38 years old, a mechanic from a quiet little town called Groveport, just southeast of Columbus, Ohio. For the last 12 years, I've been married to Elena Carter, the woman I thought I'd grow old with, the woman I thought I knew inside and out. She's got these green eyes that catch the light like stained glass, a laugh that could melt ice, and a way of moving through life that made you feel like everything was gonna be okay. We've got a daughter, Sophie, 7 years old, with her mom's smile and my stubborn streak, a perfect mix of us, or so I thought. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was good. I spent my days at Miller's auto shop, elbow deep in engines, coming home with grease under my nails and a paycheck that kept the lights on. Elena worked freelance, planning events, weddings, corporate parties, that kind of thing. She'd always been good with people, charming clients with that easy smile, pulling off impossible deadlines like it was nothing. I trusted her. Hell, I had no reason not to. We met back in '09 at a friend's barbecue in Columbus. I was 23, fresh out of trade school, hauling around a beat-up toolbox and a chip on my shoulder. She was 21, a college dropout with big dreams and a part-time gig at a flower shop. I spilled beer on her shoes, total accident, and she laughed it off, said I owed her a dance to make up for it. That was Elena, quick to forgive, quick to find the light in things. We danced that night under string lights, the air thick with summer heat, and I knew right then I was done for. 2 years later, we were married in a little chapel off Route 33, her in a second-hand dress, me in a rented suit that didn't quite fit. Sophie came along in 17, and for a while, it felt like we'd cracked the code to happiness. But trust, it's a fragile thing. It doesn't shatter all at once. It cracks, bit by bit, until you're left staring at the mess, wondering how you missed the signs. That's how it started with us. Little things, stuff I could have brushed off if I'd tried harder. I'd drag myself home from the shop after a 10-hour shift, and Elena wouldn't be there. Late meeting, she'd text, casual as if it were nothing. She'd roll in after 9 p.m., sometimes 10, kiss me quick on the cheek, and head upstairs to unwind. I'd catch it then, her perfume, but not her perfume. Hers was soft, floral, like the lilac bushes out back that she'd planted when we bought the house. This was different, sharp, musky, expensive, like something you'd smell in a high-end department store. It clung to her coat, her scarf, her hair. New scent? I'd ask, keeping my tone light. She'd shrug, flash that smile, say something about a sample she'd picked up. I let it go. People change perfumes, right? No big deal. Then came the phone calls. They started maybe 6 months back, creeping into our routine like unwanted guests. She'd get them at odd hours, over dinner while Sophie chattered about school, during movie night when we'd finally gotten her to sit still, once even at 3 a.m., the buzz of her phone jolting me awake. She'd grab it, glance at the screen, and mutter work before slipping out onto the porch. I'd watch her through the kitchen window, pacing under the yellow glow of the bug light, her voice too low to make out. She'd come back in, hair mussed from the wind, and I'd ask, everything okay? Yeah, just a stressed client, she'd say, that smile flickering on like a switch. But her eyes, they wouldn't meet mine. You ever notice how someone's eyes can tell you more than their words? Elena's used to light up when she looked at me, like I was her anchor. Now they were cloudy, guarded, like she was hiding something behind them. I tried to ignore it. Told myself I was paranoid, that marriage isn't always sunshine and roses. We'd been through rough patches before, money troubles after Sophie was born, a fight over moving to a bigger place that ended with me sleeping on the couch for a week. But we'd always come back to each other. This felt different. Heavier. Like something was slipping away, and I couldn't grab hold of it. 2 months ago, it all came crashing down. It was a Thursday night, late October, rain drumming against the windows of our little split-level house. Sophie was asleep upstairs, her nightlight casting star patterns across the ceiling. I'd fixed it for her the week before, proud as hell when she squealed about it. Elena was in the shower, humming some tune I didn't recognize, and her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. She never left it unlocked, never. It was always in her purse, her pocket, her hand, like it was glued to her. But that night, it was right there, screen glowing in the dim light. I don't know what made me pick it up. Curiosity? Suspicion? Maybe some part of me already knew the truth and just needed to see it. I swiped it open, and there it was, a text from someone named Mark. Just Mark, no last name, no context. The message read, "You were incredible last night. Can't stop thinking about it." My hands went cold, numb, like I plunged them into ice water. I stared at those words, my pulse hammering in my ears so loud I could barely hear the rain. Incredible last night? She'd told me she was at a venue walk-through with a bride-to-be, some picky woman planning a winter wedding. Said she'd be home late because they couldn't agree on lighting or some crap. I scrolled up, desperate for more, but the chat was empty, everything else deleted, wiped clean. Just that one message, glaring up at me like a slap in the face. My wife, my Elena, getting texts like that? From some guy named Mark? I set the phone down, hands trembling so bad I almost knocked over my beer. I stood there, rooted to the spot, listening to the water running upstairs, her humming floating down like nothing was wrong. Part of me wanted to smash the damn phone, watch it shatter against the wall. Part of me wanted to storm up there, demand answers. But when she came down, wrapped in a towel, hair dripping onto the hardwood, that smile on her face, I couldn't do it. Not yet. I needed to think, to breathe. Who's Mark? I asked, keeping my voice steady, low, like I was asking about the weather. She froze, just for a heartbeat, towel clutched tight against her chest. Her eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me, quick as a flash. What? She said, like she hadn't heard me right. Mark, I repeated, leaning against the counter. He texted you. She laughed, a little too quick, a little too high-pitched, like a string about to snap. Oh, him. Just a client. He's dramatic, you know how event people are. Probably freaking out about some party detail. She brushed past me, snatching her phone off the counter, that smile still plastered on like a mask. Nothing to worry about, she added, heading upstairs without looking back. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to so bad it hurt. I stood there in the kitchen, the rain pounding outside, and told myself it was nothing. A misunderstanding. She was my wife, she wouldn't do that to me, to us, to Sophie. But that night, I lay awake next to her, her breathing soft and even, her body warm against mine, and all I could think was, she's lying. Those words, incredible last night, looped in my head like a broken record, mocking me. The next few weeks were a slow bleed. She started traveling, for work, short trips, she said, to Chicago, Cincinnati, once even Pittsburgh. Big clients, she'd explain, packing a suitcase with that distracted air she'd picked up lately. I'd offer to drive her to the airport, Columbus International's only 20 minutes away, but she'd wave me off. Easier to Uber, she'd say, kissing Sophie on the forehead, barely brushing my cheek. When she'd come back, she was different. She'd hug Sophie tight, ruffle her hair, ask about her day with that bright mom voice. But with me? It was like I was a ghost in my own house. She'd sit at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the backyard, lost in some world I couldn't reach. And that perfume, that damn musk, was everywhere now. On her clothes, in her car, lingering in the air like a stranger who wouldn't leave. I tried talking to her. One night, after Sophie was in bed, I pulled out the good stuff, her favorite red wine, a bottle we'd saved from our anniversary. I poured 2 glasses, sat her down at the table. Elena, I said, keeping my voice soft, what's going on? You're not yourself lately. She twirled the glass, eyes fixed on the wine, not me. It's just work, Andrew, she said, her tone flat. It's stressful. You wouldn't get it. There was an edge there, sharp and unfamiliar, like I was an annoyance instead of her husband. Try me, I pressed, leaning forward. She sighed, sharp and impatient, like I'd asked her to solve world hunger. I'm fine. You're overthinking it. Can we drop this? Then she got up, left the glass half full, and went upstairs. That was it. Door closed, conversation over. I couldn't shake it. The text, the trips, the way she pulled away, it was eating me alive, gnawing at every quiet moment. I started noticing more, stupid little things that piled up like evidence in a trial I didn't want to face. A receipt in her purse for a coffee shop in Columbus when she'd said she was in Chicago. A new necklace, gold, delicate, not her style, that she brushed off as a client gift. The way she'd lock her phone the second I walked into a room. I wasn't sleeping right, wasn't eating right. Sophie even asked me one morning, Daddy, why do you look so tired? I forced a smile, ruffled her hair, said I was just working hard. But inside, I was falling apart. So one night, when she said she was meeting a client in the city, I did something I never thought I'd do, I followed her. Call it crazy, call it desperate, I don't care. I had to know. I waited until she left, her sedan pulling out of the driveway under a gray November sky. I grabbed the keys to the old pickup truck, a '98 Ford I'd rebuilt myself, and tailed her, keeping my headlights off until I was a block behind. She didn't head downtown to some fancy venue like she'd said. She drove east, past the strip malls and gas stations, to a bar on the edge of town, a dive called Rusty's, all flickering neon and cracked pavement. I'd driven by it 100 times, never thought twice about it. Now I parked across the street, slouched low in the cab, and watched her step out of her car. She smoothed her hair, adjusted her coat, and walked inside like she owned the place. 10 minutes later, this guy showed up. Tall, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, dark hair slicked back, wearing a suit that screamed money, tailored, not off the rack, the kind of thing you don't see in Groveport. He moved with confidence, like he belonged everywhere he went. I couldn't see his face clear from the truck, but when he walked into Rusty's, Elena met him at the door. They hugged, too long, too close, her hand lingering on his arm, his sliding down her back. My stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I'd puke. I sat there for 2 hours, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white, watching through the grimy windshield. When they came out, his arm was around her waist, her head tilted up, laughing at something he said. I'd forgotten what her laugh sounded like with me, free, unguarded. They climbed into his car, a black BMW, shiny as a fresh coat of paint, and peeled out into the night. I followed. I kept my distance, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, palms sweaty on the wheel. They didn't go far, just a few miles into Columbus proper, to the Marriott downtown, all glass and lights reflecting off the wet streets. I pulled into the lot across from the entrance, watched them walk in, his hand on her lower back, her leaning into him like it was natural. I didn't follow them inside. Couldn't. I just sat there, engine idling, staring up at the hotel, picturing them in some room, laughing, touching, doing God knows what. My marriage, 12 years of promises, fights, late-night talks, crumpling right in front of me like a wad of paper. I didn't confront her the next day. I wanted to, every fiber of me screamed to, but I needed more than my own eyes. Proof. Something solid she couldn't talk her way out of. I went to work like a zombie, turning wrenches on autopilot, replaying that night over and over. My buddy Tony at the shop noticed, pulled me aside during lunch, asked what was wrong. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. He'd been through a messy divorce a few years back, caught his ex with some guy from her yoga class. You need a PI, he said, scribbling a name on a napkin. Rick Delaney. He's good. Found stuff on my ex I never would have dug up myself. I took the napkin, stuffed it in my pocket, thanked him. That night, I called Rick. His voice was rough, like he'd smoked a pack a day for 20 years, but he sounded steady. Ex-cop vibes, the kind of guy who'd seen too much to bullshit you. We met the next day at a diner off Route 33, greasy spoon, flickering lights, the smell of burnt coffee in the air. I slid him a photo of Elena I'd printed from my phone, her smiling at Sophie's last birthday, green eyes bright. I told him everything, the text, the trips, Rusty's, the hotel. Give me a week, he said, tapping the table with a thick finger. I'll get you answers. That week was hell on earth. Elena floated through the house like nothing was wrong, cooking spaghetti for Sophie, asking me about the shop, smiling that hollow smile that didn't reach her eyes. But I couldn't look at her the same. Every "I love you" felt like a knife twisting. Every time she brushed my arm or kissed my cheek, I flinched, imagining her hands on him, that suit, that laugh. I kept seeing them together, kept hearing that text in my head, incredible last night. Who was he? Some rich client? A fling? How long had she been playing me for a fool? I started digging on my own, too restless to wait for Rick. I checked her car one night while she slept, found a parking stub from a garage in Columbus, dated 2 days before her supposed Chicago trip. I rifled through her purse when she was in the shower, found a receipt for a coffee shop, grounds and beans, time-stamped when she'd said she was 3 hours away. Little lies piling up, each one a brick in the wall between us. I didn't sleep right, didn't eat right. Sophie asked me again one morning, "Daddy, why do you look so sad?" I hugged her tight, said I was just tired, but my voice cracked, and she hugged me back like she knew. Thursday rolled around, and Rick called. "Meet me at the diner," he said, voice flat, no nonsense. "You're not gonna like this." I got there early, sat in the same booth, a cold coffee untouched in front of me, my leg bouncing under the table. When he slid in across from me, he didn't waste time. "Her name's Elena Carter, right? Married to you, works events." I nodded, throat tight as a vice. He dropped a thick manila folder on the table, the thud making my coffee ripple. "She's not just cheating, man," he said, eyes hard. "It's bigger than that." I opened it with trembling hands, the paper crinkling under my fingers. Photos spilled out, dozens of them, glossy and sharp. Elena with the guy from Rusty's, Mark. Some at the Marriott, some outside a house I didn't recognize, big, modern, with a gated drive and manicured shrubs, the kind of place we'd never afford. Then came the documents, bank statements, wire transfers, numbers that made my head spin. Thousands of dollars, $5,000, $10,000, once even $25,000, funneled into an account in her name, one I'd never seen. "What the hell is this?" I asked, voice cracking like dry wood. Rick leaned in, elbows on the table, voice low. His real name's Marcus Hale. Lawyer out of Chicago, big shot with a penthouse downtown and a reputation that stinks. "Your wife. She's not planning events. She's working with him. Off-the-book stuff, money laundering, maybe worse." My mind reeled, the diner spinning around me. "No," I said, shaking my head hard. "That's insane. Elena's not, she's not a criminal." Rick didn't blink, just tapped the folder. "Believe what you want, Andrew. Those deposits started 6 months ago, same time she started those trips. Hale's got a rap sheet, fraud, extortion, couple of cases the cops couldn't pin on him. He's dirty. And she's in deep." I drove home in a fog, the folder burning a hole in the passenger seat, the rain streaking down the windshield like tears. Money laundering? My Elena? The woman who'd cried at Sophie's school play last spring, who'd spent hours picking out paint colors for our living room? It didn't fit, didn't compute. But the evidence, it was right there, staring me in the face, mocking me with every line of ink. I pulled into the driveway, sat there with the engine off, gripping the wheel until my hands ached. How did we get here? How did 12 years turn into this? That night, she came home late again, heels clicking on the hardwood, coat still damp from the rain. I waited in the kitchen, the folder open on the table, photos fanned out like a crime scene from some cop show. When she walked in, dropping her purse by the door, I didn't hold back. "Who's Marcus Hale?" I said, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and hurt, loud enough to make her jump. She stopped dead, purse strap slipping from her shoulder to the floor with a soft thud. "What?" she whispered, eyes darting to the pictures, then back to me, wide and panicked. "Don't lie to me, Elena," I snapped, standing up so fast the chair scraped the floor. "I know. The hotel, the money, Rusty's, all of it." For a moment, she just stood there, pale as a ghost, lips parted like she couldn't find air. Then she crumpled, tears welling up, hands trembling as she clutched the edge of the counter. "Andrew, I didn't mean for this to happen," she choked out. "It started as a job. He offered me work, good money, better than I'd ever made. I didn't know what he was into at first. And the hotel?" I cut in, voice rising, sharp as a blade. "The texts? You're sleeping with him, Elena." She flinched, tears spilling over, streaking her mascara. "It wasn't supposed to be like that," she sobbed. I got in over my head. He wouldn't let me out." I slammed the table, the photos jumping, my beer bottle tipping over and spilling across the wood. "Don't give me that crap. You chose this. What about Sophie? What about us?" She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. "I was trying to protect you," she whispered, voice breaking. "If I didn't do what he wanted, he'd come after us. He knows where we live, Andrew. He knows everything." That hit me like a sledgehammer, knocking the wind out of me. "What are you saying?" I rasped, dread creeping up my spine like ice. She looked up, eyes red and wide with terror. "He's dangerous. More than you can imagine. And now that you know, he'll know too." The next 2 days were a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I sent Sophie to her grandma's in Dayton, didn't tell Elena, didn't trust her to know where our daughter was. I called in sick to the shop, paced the house like a caged animal, checking the locks every hour, peering out the windows at every passing car. Elena stayed quiet, hovering around like a shadow, making coffee she didn't drink, staring at her phone, jumping at every sound. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Was she a victim, trapped by this bastard? Or a liar who'd sold us out? Both? Neither. My head was a war zone, and she wasn't giving me answers. I tried talking to her again that second night, cornering her in the living room after she'd put away Sophie's toys. "Elena," I said, voice low, "tell me the truth. All of it. Now." She sat on the couch, knees pulled up, staring at the floor. "I met him at an event last year," she said finally, her voice small. "A fundraiser in Chicago. He was charming, connected. Said he needed someone discreet to handle special projects. I thought it was just logistics, moving money for clients, off-the-book stuff. By the time I realized it was illegal, I couldn't get out. He made it clear what happens to people who say no." She looked up, eyes pleading. "I didn't want this, Andrew. I swear." "And the affair?" I pressed, hating how my voice shook. She swallowed hard, tears brimming again. "It wasn't an affair. Not at first. He pushed, I resisted, but he's not someone you say no to. It happened twice. I hated it. Hated myself." I turned away, fists clenched, bile rising in my throat. You should have told me, I said. We could have figured it out. She laughed, bitter and broken. You don't figure out Marcus Hale. You survive him. Then, on the third day, I came home from a quick run to the store, bread and milk, normal stuff that felt absurd now, and the house was empty. Too quiet. Sophie was safe at her grandma's, thank God, but Elena, she was gone. Her sedan wasn't in the driveway. Her closet was half empty, her jewelry box cleared out. Just a note on the kitchen counter in her shaky handwriting, I'm sorry. Don't look for me. I called Rick, panic clawing at my chest, my voice a jumbled mess. She's running, he said, calm as ever over the line. Hale probably got spooked, maybe she tipped him off, maybe he's got eyes on you. You need to watch your back, Andrew. I hung up, staring at that note, my mind racing a mile a minute. Where was she? With him? Running from him? Dead in a ditch somewhere? The questions choked me, but I didn't have time to think. That night, around 2 a.m., I heard it, a low rumble outside, like a car idling too long. I crept to the living room window, peeked through the blinds with my heart in my throat. A black BMW sat across the street, headlights off, engine purring in the dark. The driver's window rolled down, and there he was, Marcus Hale, face lit by the glow of his phone, staring right at my house. My breath caught, my whole body locking up. He didn't move, didn't get out, just sat there, eyes locked on my windows like he could see through the walls. A message, loud and clear, I know you know. Then he drove off, tires whispering on the wet pavement, leaving me shaking in the dark. I sank to the floor, back against the wall, sweat beading on my forehead, the note still clutched in my hand. It's been a week since then. No word from Elena, not a call, not a text, not a whisper. Rick's digging deeper, says Hale's tied to some heavy hitters in Chicago, guys with mob connections, guys who don't leave loose ends. He thinks Elena's alive, maybe laying low, maybe back with Hale under duress. I don't know what to believe anymore. The woman I loved, the woman I danced with under string lights, who held my hand when Sophie was born, she's gone. Maybe she never existed, just a ghost I built in my head. All I've got left is Sophie, safe with her grandma, and a house full of echoes. Every night, I sit by that window, curtains cracked just enough to see the street. I don't sleep much, can't, with the way every creak in the house sounds like footsteps, every shadow looks like him. I'm waiting. Waiting for that BMW to roll up again, for the other shoe to drop. Waiting for answers I might not live to hear. Because if Hale's watching me, if he knows what I know, this isn't over. Not by a long shot. And I'm starting to think it never will be.